Hey everyone, and welcome to the recap of day 4 in the Wolfenbarger case. And at this point, we have to ask ourselves, like every day, what we have had no direct evidence pointing to Christopher Wolfenbarger being the one who unalived Melissa, parted her up, and dumped her body. What we had yesterday was probably the saddest display of detective work ever in the 3 years I have been covering cases. We had a lead detective who took over the cold cases, who came in and said, well, there was some pressure to look at it back in 2021. I did that. I interviewed him. I had absolutely no reason to look at him. And then in 2023, I interviewed him again. No real new evidence, just more pushback from the family and the podcaster. And because he had an inconsistent statement with 20 years between these two statements, he must have done it. We had a lead detective who multiple times was asked by the defense on cross, please answer yes and no. And every time he would go into diatribes about whatever he tried to imply that Christopher was guilty, but he never, ever answered any of the questions. This case relies simply on, do you believe Tina and Norma? Known liars. Women who couldn't even keep their stories straight. If you believe them, you must convict because there's no evidence. There's a saw missing. Did you ever find the saw? Absolutely not. But because there's a saw missing, he did it. Why? My biggest problem is after 4 days, they try and take a DV report that led to a temporary restraining order month before she apparently went missing. In those months, there was nothing, not one family member who came forward and said, well, she was trying desperately to get out of the house. There was no family member coming forward saying, well, he was restraining her and she couldn't move about. All we know is in those 4 months, she went to prison and she got banged at the Waffle House, which to me doesn't seem like a woman who is restrained to her home and have no opportunity to talk to anyone else. But that's what the lead investigator wants you to believe, that all of this have the classical signs of domestic violence, and because it has that, he did it. But it doesn't. There are 2, maybe 3 incidents that could potentially be something. There's the yelling that the neighbor heard, who also claims she might have seen a black eye, but that was when she only had one kid. So that must have been at least 2 years before she disappeared. Or another timeline doesn't add up. Then we have he dragged me down the street and I have all kinds of bruises from it. The police officer took that as a verbal statement. And this lead investigator said, no, this is absolutely true. We had the officer on the stand testifying. I never saw it. I just wrote down what she claimed. What does it prove? Well, to this investigator, it proves everything. And they will, of course, be calling a DV victims expert who will bring in the wheel of domestic abuse. That wheel will make you, me, and everyone a perpetrator of domestic abuse, especially if we have dangly bits between our legs. Because there's no way if you go through that wheel, we saw this wheel in the JDAH case. If you go through it, there's no way the man won't come out as a DV perpetrator, which is BS. We know she had enough freedom that she could go to her work. She changed workplaces. She banged Dixon. She went to her mom's house with photographs. What we don't have is any of the evidence that there was social control. Well, they never saw her outside of the house. What does that mean? I haven't seen my neighbor for 2 months. I've seen his kid, so I think, okay, he's fine. But I haven't seen him for 2 months. He went on vacation back in early July, told me, hey, I'm going on vacation for a week. Can you look after my house? Sure. I've seen his car come back, but I haven't seen him. I know he's really sick. He doesn't go out much because he's really, really sick. That's why I think as long as I see his daughter, 2 and 2 together, he's fine. But in this case, because they called in one witness who most likely was doing a lot of drugs at the time, they built an entire case on her having a memory clear as day what happened 27 years ago. 27 years ago, as you all know, I'm 27 years old, but 27 years ago, I know I was working on an island outside of where I live, and think I had a girlfriend. I won't mention her name. Yeah, and she broke up with me. No, that was the next summer. I can't tell you who I met on the street. I can remember where I worked because that was the year after I got out of the military the first time. Can any of you tell me exactly what your neighbors were fighting about 27 years ago that wasn't important enough that you would call the police? No, you can't. This has only one single line going through all of this. Do you believe Tina and Norma? That podcast, Zone 7, she believed them. She used them to promote this case. The DA's office used her to do some cold cases, and then they work backwards. We can't pin it on Carl because he's dead, and this family really likes Carl. So we have to pin it on Chris. Why? Because he had the evil eye. Everything that lead investigator told us about Chris and why he was the suspect yesterday could just as well have been transferred to Norma. Social control. She was trying to force birth control pills into her daughter. That's why she started running away. Maybe the tumultuous household she grew up in. And who knows who was doing the screaming at the house? Was Chris the one screaming, or could it be Melissa screaming because she wasn't landing the place she wanted to land in life? It happens sometimes that you get mad at your partner because he doesn't bring enough moolah home. He might have spent your money on drugs. He might have been buying drinks. He might be gambling. Could you then maybe potentially yell at him? He yells back. We just know there was yelling. And as always, well, then the victim is always the wife. But in reality, females start at least as many arguments as men does. All of this is conjecture. all of this is speculation. All of this is, it's based on hearsay upon hearsay upon hearsay, and no one is believable. This is ridiculous. The judge should have stopped that lead investigator 20 times yesterday, admonished him, told the jury, this guy can't say that in front of you. But this judge is just as bad as I feared. Sadly, we're going to go on again today. Why did you zoom out? Going to go on again today. And I don't think we're going to get anywhere closer to the truth. But we will now have an expert come in and tell us, without looking on any facts of the case, that Chris was a serial abuser, because everyone who's put into the veil of DV is a serial abuser.